Tonight, the first Muslim woman in the U.S. House panel of Foreign Affairs voted out.
This debate today, it's about who gets to be an American.
She says she is not surprised because she is a Muslim immigrant from Africa.
When you push power, power pushes back.
And is Canada under surveillance?
What planet is that?
A Chinese spy balloon is spotted floating in Canadian airspace. Later in the show, we take a closer look at Ismaili history through an exhibition at the Aga Khan Museum.
The exhibition profiles a few specific stories where we learn the individual details of particular Ismailis who have made Canada their home.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is the Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I am Saamiyah Syed. The U.S. House of Representatives voted along party lines yesterday to remove one of the first two Muslim women elected to Congress from her seat on the panel of Foreign Affairs. The 218 to 211 vote saw all Democrats vote in opposition to removing Ilhan Omar from the panel. Nearly all of the chamber's 222 Republicans voted to strip her of her assignment. Omar faces charges of anti-Semitism in 2019. She implied some lawmakers' support for Israel is related to money. Later, Omar apologized for her comments. On the floor of the House ahead of the vote, Omar said it was not a surprise that as a Muslim immigrant from Africa, she was considered unworthy to speak about foreign policy. The Supreme Court of Canada will not hear the case of a Muslim charity that challenged a one-year suspension applied to it by the Canada Revenue Agency. This comes after Human Concern International, or HCI, faced a one-year suspension on its tax receiving privileges by the CRA from 2021 to 2022. HCI had registered appeals with the CRA and the Federal Tax Court, arguing that the charity should not be suspended while the appeals were being heard. Both appeals were not granted. The charity then took the case to the Supreme Court. Although the suspension ended last summer, the charity continued its appeal, claiming that the suspension process brings serious repercussions for charities.
There's that. What planet is that?
Ottawa has summoned China's ambassador after Canadian officials reported spotting a Chinese spy balloon in Canadian airspace. According to officials, a high-altitude surveillance balloon was seen yesterday. The U.S. also reported a Chinese surveillance balloon over its country. The balloon is being tracked by the North American Aerospace Defense Command. Officials at the Department of National Defense say that Canadians are safe. According to them, the government is taking necessary steps to keep its airspace secure. China's foreign ministry says it regrets that the balloon strayed into the U.S. airspace. It says the airship is for meteorological and scientific purposes. A Muslim Growth Day will be organized by Sound Vision Canada to help Muslim community in their personal and professional development. Scheduled for February 19, the event will be held at Sheridan College in Brampton, Ontario. The training will run from morning till evening. The event focuses on 4 objectives. This includes relationships, productivity, mental health, and communication. Notable speakers will provide insightful discussions and activities to help Muslims tap into their hidden potential. A few speakers for the event include names like Imam Hamid Slimi, Razia Hamidi, Taha Ghayur, and Dr. Catherine Bullock. Now, the Aga Khan Museum in Toronto has opened a community storytelling exhibition to celebrate 50 years of Ismaili Muslim migration to Canada. To hear more about the exhibition, I'd like to welcome Brother Akil Varani, the artist and creative director who pulled all of this together, to tell us more. Welcome, Brother Akil, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sister Saamiyah. Very happy to be here.
We're happy to have you on once again. Brother Akil, let's start broadly. Tell me, what is this exhibit all about?
So this is a traveling audiovisual exhibition of community storytelling that celebrates and commemorates over 50 years of Ismaili Muslim migration to Canada. So what that means is that there are different communities of Ismailis that live worldwide. Ismaili Muslims make up about 12 to 15 million people worldwide, and from many different parts of the world, they have come to Canada for various reasons. and settled here. And so the exhibition profiles a few specific stories where we learn the individual details of particular Ismailis who have made Canada their home. And through those individual stories, we get a broader sense of the different waves of migration that have brought Ismailis here and what Ismailis have done in Canada in this 50 or so years.
I want to ask about the specific pieces, but I'll get back to that later on today. But you mentioned that the exhibit is meant to showcase some of the migration to Canada over the past 50 years or so. What happened in the last 50 years that this became the scope for the project?
Yeah, we used the 1972 Ugandan Asian expulsion as a starting point. This was the first mass migration of non-European and non-Christian refugees to Canada in Canada's history. So this is when the first significant wave of Ismaili Muslims came to Canada, when the Ugandan president in 1972, Idi Amin, expelled all Asians from the country. Some went to the UK, some went to India, many went to Commonwealth countries, and some were stateless. And many of those who were stateless, when their Ugandan citizenship was confiscated or revoked, ended up coming to Canada and settling here. So we use that as the starting point, the jumping off point, but we also profile some of the other migration stories of Ismaili Muslims. There are Ismaili Muslims who come from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Tajikistan, from India, Pakistan, Iran, from all over the world. And so we try and bring the viewer on a journey with us to understand all of the diverse Ismaili Muslims who now call Canada home and who have made Canada their home over the past 50 years.
And I can see how that would make for some powerful pieces in the exhibition. But take us through the exhibition itself. What are some of the pieces that are being put on display?
Yeah, so broadly, the exhibition starts with a bit of context. It's important for viewers, whether Ismaili, whether Muslim, whether not Muslim, to understand who are Ismaili Muslims. What communities do they come from? Who is His Highness the Aga Khan, right? Or who we as Ismailis refer to as Maulana Hazar Imam. Who are the Ismailis? Where do they come from? What's their history? And then understanding the historical context of East Africa in the 1970s to understand what brought about President Idi Amin's expulsion of what we call in quotations the Ugandan Asians. And so then we kind of move chronologically through the timeline. The first mass migration from East Africa, Ismailis fleeing war in Afghanistan. There are Ismailis in search of better economic opportunities who have come from Tajikistan, and all sorts of different struggles that pushed Ismaili Muslims from other parts of the world to find refuge elsewhere, and who ultimately chose Canada as their home. And the last part of the exhibition is more of a celebration of where we are now, what things we've accomplished. The first Muslim mayor in Canada, or decades ago, the first Muslim MPs and political figures. We have Ismaili Muslim artists who are celebrated, writers, and across all sectors of society, we wanted to celebrate what Ismaili Muslims have accomplished in the last 50 years.
Well, just hearing about it, I can imagine that it would be a difficult task to fit in what would be considered a kaleidoscope of the community into a very condensed exhibition. How did you go about trying to narrow and choose what was being put on display?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I don't have a particularly insightful answer other than to say my golden rule is to acknowledge these difficulties. So the exhibition, I actually state in text, it was hard to sort through this voluminous collection of Ismaili migration stories to try and pick, only a small section. So we tried to pick a representative cross section of these stories, with the understanding that there are just too many stories to fit on a finite number of printed panels. We can only fit so many beautiful photographs and maps and timelines into the exhibition. So we tried to have a good representation from different communities. And it was a series of judgment calls, and the exhibition was created in service to the community. And we just hope that we did a decent enough job that's worthy of representation of this community.
Well, what I find very unique about this exhibition is that it included very personal anecdotes and stories, as you mentioned. What is one that stuck out to you as that left a long-lasting impression, or something you can recall right now?
Yeah, there are so many to think of. Let's say one that comes to mind is an Ismaili Muslim who came from Uganda, and in 1972 in Canada, in Montreal, he was working with an immigration official and saying, I studied at the university, Makerere University, in East Africa, and maybe I could go to McGill University in Montreal and see if they'll take me if I can continue my studies. And the immigration official said, you can try, but they probably haven't heard of Makerere University. So, you might be wasting your time, but I'm not going to stop you. And a week later, this Ismaili Muslim man comes back to this immigration official and says, guess what? Not only have they heard of this university, but they hold it in high esteem. We have colleagues from that university who already work at McGill. And so while I've been looking for housing and a way to settle, I'm now going to be a student at McGill University. And I'm glad I tried, because if I would have edited myself and not taken that chance to go to McGill and see if they'll take me, I wouldn't have this great opportunity. So it's a nice story, because it talks about the resilience and the perseverance of different Ismaili Muslims, and just taking those chances that you have to take when you're in kind of dire circumstances and looking for anything to kind of grab onto.
And to serve as inspiration for everyone, really. Now, these exhibition spaces are being, the exhibition will be held in primarily Jamaat Khanas. Why choose this space for the exhibition?
Yeah, great question. So the exhibition is, of course, on now at the Aga Khan Museum, but we'll move to Jamaat Khanas. And the reason for that is simply that those are the spaces we generally have access to. It's a fairly large exhibition. There are 40 printed panels, an audio play, various sort of extra materials to share. And so it made sense that because we have access to these sort of social halls, for example, in Jamaat Khanas, which are Ismaili mosques and community halls, if we have access to those spaces, that's going to be the easiest way to let the exhibition travel and to use them as homes to bring people in. So it was just more of a practical decision. And I like that practical decision because, Jamaat Khanas, for me, growing up, Ismaili have always been places of inclusion, welcoming community spaces. And so what better place to pick for hosting an exhibition that celebrates Ismaili migration.
Well, thank you so much, Brother Akil, for coming on today and sharing more about the exhibition, and good luck on the national tour.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You are watching the Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. That's it from our Toronto studios tonight. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more Canadian Muslim content. Stay safe, and until next time.